This is a reason to go hip, hip, hooray. You don't say that very often, but today's a reason to do it. The economy adding 224,000 jobs in June, much more than expected. All these people came back into the labor force, 335,000 of them. Come in, Larry Kudlow, National Economic Council Director. Larry is a big, fat softball. What do you think of the jobs number?
That's a great number. I mean, we are in a strong prosperity cycle, point number one. Point number two, we have registered stronger economic growth with, frankly, less inequality. That's something I've heard on campaign trail.
Right.
Growth is faster, prosperity is stronger, inequality is less. The bottom parts of the workforce, the non-supervisory people, they're doing better than their supervisors.
Well, and the point is, it's easier to hire a white-collar worker than it is a blue-collar. You try to get a blue-collar worker, and it's much more difficult to hire them because there's such a full labor market there.
Well, that's a good point. Although there are a lot of people out there. I mean, you're getting people coming out of woodwork. I do want to say my colleague Ivanka Trump's campaign to help reskill and retrain workers. I think July is some kind of a worker employment month, but everything's a worker employment month around here. And look, I think that people should understand again. I don't know, for the 10,000 millionth time in the last 3 or 4 decades, I will say, and you know it's coming, more people working, more people succeeding, more people earning higher wages from their success does not cause inflation.
Right.
Let me repeat that.
Right.
More people working does not cause inflation. Period. Full stop.
In other words, the Fed doesn't get it.
Well, look, I'm just going to say I think the Fed is looking at it very carefully, and that's a good thing. And I think the markets have been predicting that the Fed will probably take back its December rate hike, which was probably overbaked. Fed is independent. They will act on their own time. But I'm just saying, more fundamentally, we have to understand that with the right incentives, right, lower taxes, lower regulations, opening up energy, reforming international trade, with the right free market incentives that has been put in place by President Trump, frankly, we are getting a tremendous economic takeoff.
Right.
And
but again, the Fed...
That's a good thing, not a bad thing. And may I say, on July 4th weekend, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And let me say, when the founders wrote that, David Asman, they understood that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness was not inflationary. How's that?
I don't think they said that in particular. But let me ask about Jerome Powell. He clearly does not have a history of recognizing that you can have great economic growth at low inflation. He sees them to be related in some way. Is that why he is keeping interest rates at a level that you guys think is a little too high?
Well, look, I'm going to leave Mr. Powell aside. Again, the Fed is independent. They're working and puzzling through the same issues that everybody else is. So I'm confident, or at least hopeful, but I'm confident the Fed is going to get to the right place on this.
All right. Manufacturing numbers are up. That's great news. And again, it emphasizes or re-emphasizes the point you've been making for a long time, you just made earlier, that this is a blue-collar recovery.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so important. You know, we've done some work, NEC, CEA, and others. We've looked at the distributions here, and I know this is surfaced in some of the campaign debates, and I appreciate and respect that discussion. But, what we're really seeing is the low end of the scale for education and skills is outperforming the high end in terms not only of low unemployment, record low unemployment. I mean, you got to go back 50 or 60 years for some of these series, but also in terms of the rate of increase of their wages, which is so important. Now, I'm not saying their wages are higher than the supervisors or the so-called white collars. I'm just saying the increase is faster. That's huge. We have not seen this, David, since really the mid to late 1980s during the Reagan boom. So this is a very important development.
All right, let's talk China trade if we can. You were talking earlier about face-to-face meetings. What do you think is going to come of that? And specifically, what about the Chinese demand that before anything is signed, we have to remove all the tariffs?
Well, a couple things here. I don't want to get ahead of the curve. Telecommunications between the top people, which began pre-Osaka, will continue. And I know they're working on coming up with a date for so-called face-to-face meetings. That will happen. I don't know if that's this coming week. I think that the phone calls are this week. The face-to-face may not be for another week, but I don't want to get ahead of that curve. It's under negotiation, which is a good thing. With respect to your second point on the tariffs, I think President Trump made it very clear in Osaka to President Xi that we would suspend any tariff increases on perhaps the last $325 billion worth of trade. But the current tariff structure will remain in place. There were no conditions for those talks and no conditionality for a deal. But the two sides just need to talk about a lot of details, and I don't want to get ahead of that curve.
All right, let me talk about the Fed. We talked about the Fed before, but about a nominee for the Fed, Judy Shelton, who's an old friend of yours and mine. We've known her for decades now. She's a gold bug. I'm just wondering if the president is also a gold bug. Would he like to move to a gold standard?
Well, I think you do Judy a disservice by calling her a gold bug.
Why?
I mean, I don't think that's. Look, Judy has argued all these years for a steady, reliable dollar. And I think that's exactly the right approach. Whether that is a link to gold or some kind of commodity index or whatever remains to be seen. Now, in our conversations with Judy Shelton, who is a brilliant woman and highly qualified and has already been confirmed by the Senate, as you know, she's our executive director for the European Reconstruction Bank and so forth. Her biggest beef, and I think you'll see it in her writings and her interviews, Wall Street Journal most recently, she wants to make the point that more people working and economic growth and prosperity in general does not cause inflation and should not be the Fed's focal point. That is her point. Our other nominee, and by the way, none of the nominations are official until they go through the vetting process. I reckon you know that. But Mr. Chris Waller from the St. Louis Fed has a similar point of view, and as does his president, Jim Bullard, who dissented in the last FOMC meeting. Again, lower unemployment and more people working is a good thing, not a bad thing, and it does not cause inflation. So that's really where Judy Shelton stands.
Let me just ask again about the president,
it's consistent with presidential policy.
Have you ever heard the president talk positively about going to a gold standard?
Well, look, in the last 20 years, I've interviewed him many times on TV and radio. I've had a lot of conversations with him. I think he himself has shown some interest in gold. But that's not the main mission right now. That's just not. The main mission, is to remove obstacles to growth. To remove obstacles to growth. Some of those obstacles may be garbage in, garbage out economic models. Other obstacles are excessively high taxes and regulations, for example. And that's where the president's head and actions are going to remain. And again, today's jobs numbers, which once again beat all expectations, show you that those kinds of free market incentive policies work, and we are in a prosperity cycle, which is going to continue.
You know, Larry, you can get rid of all the economic jargon. It's so simple. It's an economic bumper sticker. Remove obstacles to growth. You just said it. If you remove obstacles to growth, you'll grow. There's no rocket science about it, right?
I'm telling you. 250 some odd years ago, the founders talked about this. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness means prosperity and remove obstacles to growth. Those guys were so smart. That's why we should celebrate them on a daily basis.
Well, and the president did a great job doing so last night. I got to ask about one other person you and I have known for a while, and that's Art Laffer. One of the guys who knew everything you were talking about long ago and talked about it even back in the 1970s. Art is, just was given the Medal of Freedom, and we were very happy to be down there to join him in celebrating that. But he came under all this criticism after it. Steve Ratner and all these other so-called economists have been speaking against him, saying that he's one of the worst economists of all time. What do you make of all that?
I don't make anything of it. I don't even think about it. Arthur Laffer is a great man. Arthur Laffer revolutionized economics in the last 50 years. He reintroduced the whole incentive model. If it pays more to work, save, invest, and take risks, people will do more of all the above. He has his opponents. Life goes on. It's a very toxic atmosphere. Yeah. He is a great man. He is deserving of this phenomenal award. He has revolutionized the economics profession and the way we think about economics. You have a few outliers and ankle biters who will never come around, but that's their problem, not Art's problem. You know, President Trump never once hesitated in our discussions about giving the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Art Laffer. Never did the president hesitate. The president himself at the ceremony, you've got a lovely picture there with POTUS putting the medal around Art's neck. He said he had studied supply-side economics when he was a student at the University of Pennsylvania. He never flinched, and that's to his great credit. Art Laffer has never flinched. I've never flinched. You, David Asman, and a whole bunch of friends of ours have never flinched. When you make a revolution, whether it's an intellectual revolution or whatever, it may not be easy, and everybody may not come on board. But I will tell you this. Because of Laffer's work, the economics profession has changed in very significant ways. And the notion of incentives is now here to stay. And that's a wonderful thing. And that's why Art is so deserving of that award.
Incentives matter, and so do you as well, Larry Kudlow. Great to see you, my friend.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.